Welcome everyone to this podcast session on product data and AI. I'm Stefan Spijkers. I'm one of the co-founders of PIMvendors.com, and this is a session on our The Single Source podcast. We have quite a lot of interesting conversations, and today is no exception, where next to my co-founder Chris, who will shortly introduce himself, we have Brian to discuss the origin of product data, not just sort of the systems involved, product lifecycle management tools, PLM, product information management tools, PIM, as you probably know, maybe Excel, maybe ERP, let's discuss. But also, well, it is 2026. AI is front and center of every process and every optimization and every proposal probably written by vendors, internal project managers. Probably you've already used AI a couple of times today, and the product data process is no exception. So we're going to discuss whether AI has a role to play, where it does impact that process, and also maybe where it can take a wrong turn. But before we get to that, maybe do a quick round of introductions. Chris, could you take over? And then Brian, just a quick introduction of what you do, who you are, and what you do.
Right, yeah. I'm Chris. I'm working for more than 30 years already in retail and wholesale projects. 25 years in e-commerce, actually the start of the e-commerce, where nothing was fixed, nothing was organized. We had to do everything ourselves. And from that point on, you saw a lot of things coming on in the market, in intermediate solutions to transport data from A to B. And actually this goes back also to the ETL from the data warehouse and business intelligence environments. So actually it was old wine in new bottles, but a lot of things of course changed as well, with the speed of data needed, the speed of the transformation of the data. All these kind of things changed over time, and now the latest thing, of course, is AI, where the speed is even skyrocketing. And how are we going to cope with that? And how are we going to make decent and reasonable and good decisions based on that? So that's the world where I'm working in, and which is really interesting and still going strong on this. Yeah, and I hand over now to Brian, having a nice conversation.
Yeah, my name is Brian Carroll. I'm the CEO of Digital Solution Group. And as Stefan said, and Chris said, that my world is more the PDM, PLM space. So it started back in the 80s when I worked at Computer Vision and created the first commercial PDM system called, of course, Product Data Manager. And then went into consulting in the 90s, and then birthed the first enterprise PLM for retail. It's called Flex PLM, which was acquired by PTC in 2005. And so now Digital Solution Group is really talking about how to intimate or create digital fluidity from mind to market. So I'm stepping back from just the PLM silo and now looking at embracing what would be considered the continuum of data. Some call it the digital thread. I think it differs depending on what industry you're in. Like if you go talk retail, color is the only digital thread that goes all the way from mind to market, right? But the AI influence now really has to be done in the proper way. Otherwise, you have a series of hallucinations. And so I think what we're going to be talking about is apropos to 2026 decisioning, as Chris said. You got to decide what to do, and you got to decide in the proper manner. And so let's have it.
Yeah. I mean, not trying to be disrespectful about your age, but you both bring a lot of experience to this conversation.
Well, the gray hairs.
Yeah. So, starting with I try to shave and then get the gray hairs out of the way. But it's starting. My experience is growing as well. But where I wanted to start, maybe for the audience, is also, I mean, we've been throwing around some terms already, right? Really get the baseline right and the basics right. And I know there's some overlap between the different terms and the solutions, and there's PIM solutions that do PLM. There's PLM solutions that work with product data. There's a more US-based term called PDM, product data management, and a more European term, product information management, which I would say is it overlapping or a synonym, or at least used synonymically. Can we maybe get those basics right first, and basically explain the different three-letter terms that we have already mentioned in these first 5 minutes?
You forgot PXM, product experience management. So, but that's continuation of product information management. And product information management is what it says, the domain of product, whereas master data management has also the domain of the supplier or the location or whatever domain is being managed in those solutions. So also this comes into mind, and I think, Brian, you can tell much more about PLM than I can. Of course, I know what it is, but it's your domain.
Yeah, I think, and I did a lot of work pulling Flex into Europe. And I've worked a lot in Europe. I actually burned out a passport during my work years, which is pretty scary to think about when you send your passport in the mail and they're going to extend the pages and you go, I hope you send it back.
Okay.
But so I've looked at PIM, PLM, PDM, all in kind of juxtaposition to each other. And I think that when you get into the core content of things that need to be engineered, where you have a life cycle of formation using high-end, let's call it mechanical CAD tools, those companies tend to center themselves around PDM because they get the PDM, or let's say advanced PDM, which we'll call product lifecycle management, from the vendor that offers the CAD tool. However, in retail, a lot of the this is what I found when we introduced Flex PLM to the market, was there really was no enterprise PLM for that business, that industry. And that's where PIM had a lot of footing, right? Because it didn't need the heavy engineering, which many times goes down into manufacturing execution systems. Now, that's not to say that in, I think it was 2018 or 2016, we worked with Henderson Sewing Machine, and we took a garment and we did a bill of labor with the bill of material, and we were stitching things at one of these PTC Live events. So you could do the same thing, but it wasn't as critical or as necessary. So I think PLM really was in the mechanical CAD world, the consumer products or aerospace, automotive, high tech, and PIM found its way as a support system for things that didn't require heavy engineering, but still needed to go to market.
I think also the difference is that in PLM you need to keep track of the history of the conception of the product, whereas in PIM it's the current state of the product. And more and more you see also that within PIM there is needed also kind of history of a product, and this is in Europe anyway. You have the digital product passport, where you have a snapshot of the current state of the product, which is maintained in a separate environment. You always have to be able to come back to this snapshot. When next month there's another batch, you will have another snapshot. But the current situation is in the PIM.
Right. So the thing that we're going to find is that depending on the product that's released to market, right, the content depth can vary significantly, right? Like if you're talking about a jacket or a shirt or clothing that we have on, it has a certain limit of the amount of density of data about it. And so within a PIM system, you can determine what's the main body fabric, right? And from that, it doesn't really matter how it got cut in a pattern. It just matters that that's the main fabric. Or if you have an outer garment, something that has an inner layer and an outer layer, those things can be managed in a PIM system, and that density of data doesn't become too cumbersome. But if you deal with like the computers we're sitting at, right? You guys are sitting at computers. I'm sitting at a computer. That high tech gets into a lot of density. And so therefore, before things go from mine to market, they could go through a PIM system that gives the high-end information about it, but where Europe wants a passport, it really wants to delve into what's detailed BOM, right? What is in there? We want to be able to have that at our disposal, even if no one ever looks at it, no one ever cares. If something were to happen, we need that to be able to trace where it went, right? So I think that's where PIM and PLM work well together, because if the product has density and definition, then it needs a PLM, but it needs to be able to embrace and send data out in a way that's useful for market. And PIM is the staging ground for that content to begin to be positioned to go out to, whether it's the market in e-com or it's big box store or it's, vendor X, retailer X. That PIM system usually is the gateway to that multiplicity of outputs, right?
And you see the basic information of a product doesn't change,
Right.
whether you're using this product in retail or in wholesale or wherever. The basic information is the same. So when we design a PIM solution, designing the implementing a PIM solution, we start from the output channels, what is needed, then we go
Yes.
back to the core of the PIM and say, okay, this is the information which is needed in all these different output channels. And I think that then the question, it becomes interesting. Okay, what can AI do to help us to avoid all the repetitive work we're doing, for instance?
Right. I mean, the whole thing of AI being able to reverse engineer, if you said, I want to get the state A, B, C, D, and E, tell me how that set of content can be stored and even factored into how it gets mapped as it gets transitioned out to these things. Yeah, so you're, to your point, using AI to reverse engineer what a PIM system should be, or to, let's say, accelerate its delivery to market. And that brings up the question of, if you look at AI and the content of a product and its receipt or acceptance or rejection in market, that content, that continuum of data, this goes back to the data warehousing, Chris, that you were talking about, right? Is that kind of data being in PIM and PLM and maybe an assortment planning before that, or project line management, that set of data, which also could include ERP, because it might be that some portions are contract manufactured. And so that data there's a common thread of content. Maybe it's the model number, maybe it's the product ID, maybe it's the item ID, and it's called the SKU ID somewhere else, and it's, item over in PLM. That harmonization of data happening and keeping track as you put it into, let's say, a data warehouse or a data lake, so that you can go back and sit AI on top of that and have that go looking for correlations. Like, never send this kind of product out to that region because they're never going to buy it. How do I know that? Because of this example, and that example. So AI should be able to digest this multiplicity of content when placed in some harmonized data lake or repository. We're calling it product memory, right? Because product memory is kind of divorced of any foundational technology. It's just product memory, and what is
Sure.
used could be. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sure. But I think a data lake or a product memory is I think great. Excel can be a product memory. No, but I mean, you're laughing,
Yes,
but
I
I
know.
think at many organizations
No,
still,
I know. No, I'm laughing because I agree with you. A lot of
yeah,
the organizations.
it's still the biggest competitor of
Right,
PLM and PIM is Excel. It's also a symptom, right? It is a symptom of not having that process really locked
right.
down or having the right tools to support that process. Um, I think we all agree that you should try to minimize the use of spreadsheets. But I'm curious, Brian, where you would say where the memory should reside, right? So I think a PLM in that sense is one type of memory. A PIM, as Chris already mentioned, is like the current state. But even to have the current state, you need to have is one snapshot of that memory, basically. Um, a
Well,
data
I don't
lake is
think product
generic.
memory Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think product memory is in one of these silos. I think product memory is a database, and I use that term loosely, architecture that can feed just like a data lake, right? It's independent of, it's fed by, because you're not going to reproduce all of the data about a product through its life cycle again in another system. But you should look at the selective content from assortment planning or product line management and PLM, which has its own common data with the prior, and it's going to keep that common data further on, but it contributes a little bit. And this product memory is going to be different for each company, right? What they care about, what they think has causal influence in the future, you call it the cause and effect, which is where AI is like Superman, right? Or Superwoman. Let's not be gender specific.
Yeah.
But the point is that this data harmonized from all these different silos, selectively aggregated, becomes product memory, which
Right.
AI can then begin to look at. Because you use this metal in the early stages of that design and you found that it faltered, you shouldn't use that metal. And who would know that? AI. Would a
Yeah,
human find it? Probably not. They might not see the commonality of something, the cause
but it
effect.
relies heavily on relations and
Yes,
on the ability to relate things to each other. And of course, we all know there's an ID, and another ID, but it also can be a combination of attribute values which makes
exactly.
information. I mean, it's not just one attribute to make the ID. Yeah.
Exactly. That's where we say that product memory is really an aggregation of each silo's common data and its own unique data, because somewhere the unique data of one system may be the correlation that AI finds combined with some other system, and merging these two together, you get the following outcome. 94% of the time, if that's true, you want to alert the company that when you do A and you do B, you're going to get C. And if you like C, just keep doing it. If you don't like C, stop doing it, right? And that's where AI really finds it'll last forever in its ability to bring insight value, business value to companies, right?
It depends on correct data.
Oh,
When
yeah,
you when
that's
you
the
are
thing.
using it this way, you really need to have correct data. Otherwise, the correlation is, well, false. Can be
Well,
there.
yeah, and Digital Solution Group, what we do is we look at how to intimate systems, right? And when I say intimate, and people kind of laugh, yeah, intimate, what the hell does that mean? Is that it really means intelligently integrating, right? So let's say you have PLM and PIM, and in the middle of that you have ERP, and PLM is sending data to ERP and to PIM, and ERP is adding its own contribution, and it might even be changing some of the common data that's coming from PLM. If that's true, then PLM should be notified that that change occurred and have the ability to update it. And this goes, Chris, to your point. You can't have inconsistent data. If you have retail price in a PLM system and it goes through and it's uh, placed in ERP for their quotes to whoever, and it's sent to PIM for its distribution to big box and ecom, and somebody changes that value, it's got to be notified. Otherwise, the last one in wins, right? And so if you dropped it 20% for some stupid ass reason, and that goes in because that transaction is something you're monitoring into product memory, then all of a sudden the merchandiser goes, I lost my margin. What happened? It's supposed to be 30%. Now we get 10. I don't want that product. And so the whole thing of data has
The
to be
the governance chain has to be
governance.
right,
Right.
and also you need to define a clear system of record for your
Exactly.
information.
And
And
maybe not allow people to change it later on
yeah,
because you set it one place and it has to be, as you said, governance has to be frozen, unchangeable as it went to other systems. If you want it to change, you got to go back and commit the person up front, the merchandiser or the product line manager, and say we're gonna take it on the nose on that one. We're gonna only get 10% margin, but because of that, we'll sell these other things, right? Well, who knows? what's in the minds of these humans, who I call kind of geniuses. They're figuring out what in retail is going to be 18 months out. How
Yeah.
the heck they do that? But it's
The
pretty amazing.
issue in these cases is that business is going fast. They want to have something changed.
Yeah.
They're not going back to the source of the data because they are able to do a change, which is wrong then. But the business needs to go on. So this change needs to be made. So we have to think as people behind the scenes.
Exactly.
We have to think, how can we organize it that a change can be fixed quickly?
So let's use your example. Let's say that you're going into PIM with data at a retail price, but because of a certain channel, the whole times two mindset, right? If you buy it, if you get it landed from the factory at $8, you wholesale it at 16, and then you retail it at 32, right? Times two, so that everyone has their margins, right? And let's say that you're going into a certain channel that you have to reduce the price more than, and it's got to be that, just because where you're going, region, competitors, I don't know. So that, to your point, Chris, would say when the transaction goes into product memory, it includes the channel that cost is coming out at, so that you don't say overall the retail price has changed. Instead, for this channel, that retail price has changed.
In this case, it needs consistency, and consistency doesn't mean that it has to be the same everywhere.
I know.
It needs to be consistent. So
Right.
when you talk about price, you go to your ERP or pricing engine or whatever. So not in all kind of corners of your environment say, okay, now I'm going to change it in PIM, now I'm going to change it in my ecom environment, now I'm going to change it there. No, you need to define where is the truth about price. It's either ERP or pricing
Or
engine,
something.
whatever.
But you still, Chris, to your point though, you still could have a channel that gets interfaced from PIM
Yeah.
that requires a lesser price,
Yeah,
but not overall.
But this channel is never interfaced only from PIM. There's always a combination of information about stock, information about price, information, all this kind of information. It's not in PIM. So you need to combine this information, preferably via kind of integration layer, but you can and combine this information. When you go to this channel, then you can have a different price.
Right. But
And
you
in
still want to be able to
wholesale,
take, so what I'm saying is that still is data that you want in product memory,
Mhm.
because knowing that for this channel, you reduce the price by 20%, reason being that there's competitors in the local market that require you to be, consistent. The elasticity is not as much as you think, but other areas you're fine, right? And so that in product memory, if AI looks at that and says, oh, for this channel, they had to reduce this product by 20%, I see that. And therefore it's a cause and effect, right? The reason why is in there as well, right? Why you had to do it. That's required in order to change the price. And so that textual definition of why, competitors in that channel becomes the AI additive. And so it goes, oh, okay, I got to figure that out. And so it doesn't alert anyone that, hey, warning, somebody just knocked the price 20% and they didn't tell me why. Instead, the why is included. AI says, I got it. Okay. So AI can not only be something that brings insights, alerts people to insights, but it can also alert people to changes that are beyond what it considers the rules.
Yeah.
Like it should never change retail more than 20%. And all of a sudden someone does it by 50%.
That can be
And
a
all of a
rule.
sudden, beep, 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 right? Alerts go
Yeah.
off.
But I think,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, Chris, but I think to do that, you need to have that central product memory, because if you do that purely on PIM, you don't have pricing or transaction data in there. If you do purely on ERP, you might have the pricing and transaction data there, but there's maybe not the context of why, because you don't see the different markets or different translations or whatever. What I find interesting is in this world of AI, every tool in that chain, right? So if PLM, you have ERP, you have PIM, your ecom system, maybe your syndication tooling, they're all rushing to add AI into their
individually.
processes.
Right.
But what I hear you say, Brian, is that it's all different facets. They only see a small part of that full product memory that you're describing, which
Right.
also means that they don't have the full context. And I
Right.
think what we have learned with AI is that you need to provide as much context as possible. You need to provide clean context. It needs to be good product data, as
Right.
already mentioned. But if you only focus on, like, what we get in the market from our customers is, hey, we want to add AI to our process because it makes it more efficient, right? And in a way that is true. Your product data enrichment is
Yeah.
more efficient if you add AI on top. But what I hear you say, and what I hear you discuss, is to get the most value from your application of artificial intelligence, you need to do it on a structural level, on a higher level than just on the tooling level.
Yeah, I think, well, there's different, if you look at agents, right? AI agents, you can have an agent that is helping you to process data through, and it does it automatically unless there's an exception. And the exception is then brings in somebody to humanly make a decision. But otherwise, these things go. So those agents actually are workflow agents that make the stamping of approval more efficient unless there's some outlier that they need to announce, right? So those are a different kind of agent. There's agents that sit in kind of at the crossroads, and as data's coming in, their job is to check it against rules, right? And so if you think of product memory as this data set that's out there in the universe someplace, and data coming into it needs to have equivalence. Like the model number must be equivalent to the original system. Let's say it's product management or it's PIM or PLM, or I really don't care what. If that model number has to be the same, and if this other system uses this attribute, let's call it SKU instead of model number, and you've already configured that layer, that meta layer, to say if SKU comes in, it has to be mapped to model number, and the rule we apply is it should be equivalent. Then somebody downstream sending in a model number that's never been used would reject and go pure and rebound off the atmosphere saying I can't let you in. So those type of agents, right, are different than the workflow agents. And then there's the agent that sits on top of this product memory, and all it does is sit and look for correlations. I mean, it's sitting there all day looking for correlations. I know I'm going to find it. I know I'm going to find it. And if all the data is continuing to transact into product memory, that pool of data will continue to transform. And out of that, insights will be alerted. And the key thing is you really got to have insights be validated, right? Like if somebody says to you, and you know, if you were searching for gold on the west coast of the United States, you know, gold rush, and somebody said, right over there, that's where the gold is. You say, bullshit. So, excuse me, you say, you're lying, prove it. And they go, oh, look. And they see the thing. You still have to do that same kind of validating with the insights coming out of AI. But you also have to know, I don't want to hear that insight 50 times. So I'm going to remember what I was told and what my reaction was, and don't tell me again, because I'm going to give you the same reaction, right? So all these things on the top are different than the workflow, different than the, you know, Datagate agents, but all of them have to be done. And Chris, to your point, the data governance has to be there. If you don't have data governance, you're going to have rebounding. It's going to be like ping, 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 ricochet rabbit, right? All these things flying back at you because they can't get in because they're wrong, right?
Governance and good architecture, because what you're describing is I need this element, I need this element, this element. So you need to think about what needs to work together in the end.
Right. And then that's the hardest part because as you pointed out, Chris, before, that you may find that something you didn't bring in from PIM or ERP or PLM needs to be added now because it seems that that has some effect. Or let's try it and see if it does have an effect. Because, and that gets into the whole thing. Let's say that you have sent in This gets into the preparing of product memory, right? And you guys do this all the time. You take data and you migrate it into a PIM system, right? How far back do you go? Well, let's go 10 years, 5 years, whatever. Bring all that product data back. So if you're looking at PLM, PIM, ERP, ecom feeding product memory, and you say, I think I want to add this additional characteristic from this system, you now have to data migrate that data corresponding to all the other data you sent so that it's iterative changing, or its iterations are in product memory, because you can't cheapen the influences that might have had earlier or it will have in the future, right? So you always got to be on the hook to maintain product memory as something that could be changed in its form over time, right? More data. As a matter of fact, let's say that you had PLM and PIM intimated, right? The data governance, Chris, that you talk of is solved, right? It's intimated. And you say, well, we're going to start product memory here. Well, you could. You could start product memory right there by selecting what in the PLM space and what in the PIM space should be fed in. And then if you go, now we're going to add ERP, we've proven that ERP is, not going to create a data governance problem, right? It's intimated. Now you just add ERP and you add something else. And so the good thing is you can just keep adding chairs to this table,
Yeah.
or this circular product memory content, and AI will just keep going, what's in there? What's in there? What's in there? And it really doesn't care.
It's getting richer and richer then.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's, I mean, you don't, Rome isn't built in one day. So,
Exactly. Those
uh,
pillars, I don't know how they built it. Think the Colosseum
yeah.
looks like kind of like the pyramids. Somebody helped them. Somebody bought a crane and they carried the stuff on top. I can't believe they just wheeled it up over top of logs. Seems a little bit rich to me. So, but I agree. Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither were any of the cities we all live in, and neither should product memory. And especially product memory shouldn't be considered done if there's more things that are happening, right? Especially if you get, we talked about before, and I don't know if it was in the recording, but serialization, right? If you've got serialization of products, and those products are going through transformations that you're finding, for a given vehicle, the bearings are wearing out much quicker than they should. And all of a sudden, that because the product memory is capturing all these replacement parts that are happening in way too early of a time frame. And you may say a recall on the bearings, right? And that's something you ingest. But product memory might have found it as something you couldn't have found as a human.
But in the base, then you need to have all this information and the relations on this information. I mean, this vehicle consists of a lot of elements, and you need to have the relation between those two. And maybe other vehicles also use these bearings, and you can find a correlation. So that's what we often see within a PIM, the definition of the relations, which is much more complex than
Right.
the definition of a product, for instance, a
And
simple
so when they
product.
talk about product memory, you could talk about graph databases, right? Which have
Yeah.
nodes and edges and whatever else. Or you can look at things that are NoSQL that have blobs of documents that are stuck in there, and how you can query through or channel through these products or this information sets. And so I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a multiplicity of data sets, database technologies that'll be the repository of content that product memory becomes composed of. So that complicates the AI navigation, right? And so the key question is there going to be a set of AI tools that are looking at data in different ways? And there's an orchestrator that's saying, okay, I'm watching. Ooh, that one's getting hot. I don't know.
But now we are talking about a situation that a company already has the mindset that they have to keep all this information, and that
Yes.
they have to relate all this information. We worked for a customer lately, and they're creating camper vans, and
Ready what?
that's a camper vans,
Oh,
and it's automotive, but
yeah.
it's with a lot of other elements in there as well. They create the vehicle, so they have the information. Otherwise, you cannot create a vehicle.
Right.
But then it stops. It's not passed through to the rest of the organization.
Wow.
So
Right.
they don't have any idea when a warranty issue is coming up or whatever, where they have to look, and they have to find individual solutions for each incident.
But see, that's where, to your point before, I don't know if we were being recorded, the early, when we were in the green room, as you would say, in one of these talk shows, you were talking about, snapshotting what got sent out as a vehicle, serialization, right? And that content should be snapped and used in combination with where it came from. Not to overwrite where it came from, but to uh, be able to influence where it came from, especially when it comes to common breakdowns that might occur in multiple vehicles using that technology. And this kind of vehicle is finding it breaks down much quicker than this type of vehicle. And so they have to look at what would the harmony of data be for the future, snapshotted from the present, right? And then that's, to your point, you got to know what data. It's very much like, when I used to do reports, right? The key thing was, if you're going to do a system, a solution, look at what people want to get and make sure that data is there for them to query it, right? If the data is not there, they can't do a report on it. And so, to your point, you got to make sure that the
Yeah.
data is there, and then you wrap around it something that, if it's AI or whether it's just reporting, so that they can see the continuity of data from its origin, right?
But then, so what I hear you say is, okay, you need to get that product memory in place. You need to make sure that it is filled and connected to the different underlying systems or the origins of product data, right? You don't want to be that camper
Right.
van company that doesn't, no, it does have the data somewhere, but it needs to be connected or unlocked. It needs to be high quality to
Right.
have the AI do its magic. Um, when we
Pixie
look at
dust.
the pixie dust magic, but I think if you look at organizations today, I don't see, well, let's say a lot, but I wanted to say I don't see any organization where this is done
No.
correctly and embedded in a process, because I do see some people do the cleanup sometimes, right? They clean up part
Right.
of that process, or they clean up part of that data repository, but they forget that it's a maintenance process, right? You don't, data for some reason gets dirty, and different factors factor in to that process for different organizations. But if you only do that cleanup once, in a year from now, or maybe even in 3 months from now, your anything you do with that data is less effective or less efficient, because the
Right.
data has been corrupted or become dirty or out of date or whatever. So you need to have that process in place. Do you have any examples of organizations where this was done
No.
correctly, or
No.
where
And
it is
that's
done?
the thing. But 2026 is the year of opening the door to AI, but making sure that the door you open is not cluttered with. You ever go to a house and people have to take off their shoes before they go in, and they always leave them right in the path of the next person that's going to walk in, and you get up and getting bobbled, and shoe groupings and pushed to the side and all that stuff. Well, you don't want that to happen, right? So you got to be able to sensitize budgeting, right? Because it's kind of like in a village where you have roads, you have people driving, and they live on the roads, and yet each one has to pay a certain amount in order to maintain those roads, right? It's a dollar amount. It's in their taxes, but it's a separate dollar amount for transportation, right? And so the same thing's sitting here. We have the need for 2026 and beyond to look at product memory as something that's a holistic combination of things, such that AI can then run on it to benefit the overall business and not just one group, right? And so that means everybody has to chip in. ERP has to chip in. PLM has to chip in. PIM has to chip in. econ, right? And they all have to pay their dues in order to get the value of insights, where the insights are only developed because of the amalgamation of all this data, right? And so I don't know that that exists at all, because, you know, I know that ERP gets like 48 times more than PLM in funding, because, you know, they make money, but people tend to forget
Actually,
if you don't have
yeah.
new products, you're not going to make any more money. So you can't really
S- The
create that
same,
drought.
the
Same in
same with
PIM, right?
the same with ecom
Yeah,
applications. They sell because it's the front end and the customer sees it, whereas PIM is somewhere,
right.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the dungeon, and you got to, you know, throw down meat for the carnivorous animals to do what they got
Yeah,
to do, so you get some heat generated. It's really kind of weird, but it's even going to be harder for this, right? Because this now has to be a stepchild of everybody. Everybody has to pony up, and people will be saying, "Oh, I don't get nothing from that. It doesn't help me," and you don't know yet, because AI will find things, and it just might be your time. I remember this. Um, you know how there's some cartoons that are one image, and from the image it's funny, you laugh at it, right? Because it's not like a cartoon of a set of things. A Fireside used to do these single panel cartoons, and there was one where the whole board was filled with all these equations, you know, and down in the bottom right corner, there were two scientists, and they used to draw these scientists as bald headed, big, huge people with wearing lab coats, right? And so there were two of them standing in the bottom right, and in right between them it says, "Then a miracle happens." I found that kind of like AI. You got all this stuff, and
yeah.
then a miracle happens. But that's what will happen, right? Because there is sensitive content that, if you could look at all of it and look for correlated content, you'd come up with these ideas, but no human exists, will ever exist, that can sit there and go through this data as it's coming up all the time. And they go, "Oh, hey, I got something." And you don't know where that got something is going to land. It could land in the ERP space. It could land in the PLM space. It could land in market. You don't know. And so everybody has to contribute with the hope that the magic will happen for them. But in essence, you need the magic, and it can only be happening with the uh, contribution of all participating silos of data. It can't work any other way.
Yeah. Maybe when you are one of these organizations struggling with getting that product memory in place, it's not just product data. Well, getting that in place and
It is
finding
a data memory, but we'll just
yeah,
call it product memory.
data memory. But I mean, I, you have to be specific, because otherwise people will just say, "Oh, I use Excel," or "I use." So if you're struggling to balance the different solutions, the different processes, the finding the right, I would say, time to value for your AI
Mhm.
efforts, like, where do you start, audience? So where would you start if you had to start tomorrow with getting that product memory in place, but also making it sort of effective for AI?
I think, well, I always come back on the organization part. Um, Even before the technical part, there has to be some consciousness about the value of organizing this, and not organizing just because of the organizing thing. You need to bring value to the organization, and going step by step, not just try to fix the whole world
Right.
in one go. That's yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you're producing products that have structure, and when I mean structure, I don't mean, you know, clothing has structure, but I'm talking about engineered structure. Then more likely than not, you may already, as a business, whoever I'm talking to, I don't know who they are, as a business, they may already have PLM and ERP locked, right, touching, right. And if they do, then that's a perfect place to begin to look at what selective data from PLM and what additional selective data from ERP should we bring into starting this product memory bucket. And then look at other target systems. So again, the good thing is, to your point, Chris, you don't have to do everything all at once. But as a business, you may want to take PLM and ERP, or if you have PLM and PIM and they're sharing data, then those two would have lockstep and have the ability to begin to be your product memory, right? You don't have to do it all at once, but the key is knowing from each organization what might have insight value when it's stored is really the content that you want to push into this product memory environment, and then place AI on top of that.
And the good thing is companies do have already a lot of information.
Yeah. And they also have AI budgets. They have AI budgets. And so if somebody's got a budget for, investigating AI, sure, you can do it with your customers, support systems or, call answering or whatever you want to do. But I think there also is a need to begin to bring AI into the mystery of data that is, flowing through the heartbeat of your company. And if you could put that on there by way of this product memory, governance being important, consistency being important, right? Then that's where you're going to find insights that are really going to add value, whether it's revenue growth, cost reduction, market acceptance, or whatever. You won't know till you do it, but you got to do it because your competitors are. I guarantee you, somebody's doing it, and it's not you. Yeah, then you got to watch out.
All right. Well, with that, I would say thanks a lot for joining us, Brian. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Chris. If you want to reach out to any of our speakers, please do check out their LinkedIn profiles. You can probably find them on LinkedIn. Brian, if people want to reach you outside of LinkedIn, or would LinkedIn be the best? How can they best reach you?
Well, they can reach me through LinkedIn, or they can send an email to brian@digitalsolutiongroup.net. It's a real easy thing to type unless you type it. And it's really like, couldn't it just be DSG? But we don't have that. We don't have that URL. Or you can look us up at, digitalsolutiongroup.net, www and all that other crap, and see what we do. AI is going to be something that you got to think about, you got to look at, and you got to begin to invest for. And these guys, myself and others, we get it, we understand it. So feel free to engage us and help you think through what it is you got to do.
And I think it's finally starting to get someplace, right? So it's not just pixie dust now. It is truly impactful if you set up the processes and the systems and the product memory correctly. So anyway, with that, thanks for sticking out this podcast and this in-depth discussion on AI, product data memory, PLM, PXM, PDM, PIM. Subscribe subscribe to our podcast on any platform you get your podcasts from, and hope to see you back soon. Thanks a lot, and goodbye.